For 27 long years I've stood watch in this lighthouse, a solitary sentinel gazing out over the endless grey of the ocean. Most days, it's just wind, waves, and the distant call of gulls, if they're around. I've learned to read the language of the sea, the subtle shift in wave patterns, the strange hush before a squall, the glint of light on water that tells of a ship just beyond the horizon. I've grown to trust the rhythm of it. It's predictable, honest, it doesn't lie. But lately something's changed. It began subtly, with a feeling more than anything tangible, a weight pressing on my chest, a tightness in the air, like the calm before a storm that never quite arrives. The first time I saw them, I thought I was dreaming. I'd been up 3 nights straight, fighting sleep with bitter coffee and the endless turning of the beacon above. I was leaning against the railing, outside, letting the salt air slap me awake when I saw movement near the base of the rocks below. Not movement like sea spray or wind-blown debris, movement like people. They weren't walking. They were standing still, 5 or 6 figures cloaked in shadow, outlines barely visible through the mist. I wiped my eyes, blinked, and they were gone. Chalked it up to fatigue, a trick of the fog, nothing more, but it didn't stop. The next night there was a knock at the door. Soft. 3 times. I live alone. Always have. There's no path up here. Nobody climbs this rock without a reason. When I opened the door, no one was there. But the air inside changed, went cold. Not drafty cold, grave cold. I could see my breath bloom like smoke. They started showing up more frequently after that. Sometimes near the rocks, sometimes right outside the window, faces pale, hair dripping as if they'd come straight from the sea. I never saw them arrive, and I never saw them leave. They were just there. Some nights they'd gather in a small cluster by the shoreline, looking up at the light, not moving, not speaking. I thought maybe I was going mad. The kind of madness that creeps in slowly, the sort that feels like a shadow you can never quite face directly. I tried to tell myself it was grief or loneliness. I tried not to look directly at them, convinced that acknowledgement might pull them closer, give them more shape, more power. But it's hard to ignore faces you recognize. Yes, recognize. The man with the scar on his temple? He was on the Meredith, a fishing boat that went missing in a storm 5 years ago. The woman with the twisted braid? She used to sell flowers down in the village, back when there was a village nearby. I hadn't thought of her in years, but there she was, staring at me from behind the glass of the lantern room like she'd never left, like she'd been waiting for me to notice. Their eyes. That's the worst part. They don't accuse, they plead, as if they're trying to tell me something. As if I'm supposed to do something. They haven't spoken, not at first, not with words. But their presence is a message all its own. They come with the fog, they leave with the tide. But each time they're closer, more defined, less like memories, more like warnings. I've stopped doubting they're real. Doubt would be a comfort. Now, doubt would mean there's still some rational explanation left to cling to, but when I wake from a dead sleep at 3:17 every morning and find the lamp lit without my hand touching it, when I hear footsteps on the stairs I haven't walked, when I smell salt water in my bed, I know they're real. They don't speak, not with voices, not with the kind of words that echo through hallways or get carried on the wind. The ghosts simply appear, night after night, just as the sky starts to turn and the light begins its slow, measured sweep across the sea. At first they stood in the distance, mere silhouettes in the fog like tricks of the mist or half-dreamed memories. But they've grown bolder with each passing night, stepping closer to the tower, closer to me, and always pointing. At first I didn't understand. I'd see them standing there, motionless and pale, soaked through with seawater that seemed to drip endlessly from their clothes, even though the rocks around them remained bone dry. One by one they'd lift their arms, fingers outstretched, pointing beyond the shoreline. Not at the tower, not at me, past me, out to sea. No words, no gestures, just that one silent command. Look. I tried to follow their line of sight, squinting, against the haze and the glare of the beacon, but there was nothing at first, just the dark, rolling ocean stretching out into nothingness. Then one night, I thought I saw something. A low pulse, far in the distance, like a flicker just beneath. The waves. It was gone as fast as it came, and when I looked again, the ghosts had vanished. Their absence was as heavy as their presence. It lingered in the air, in the crackling silence of the windless night. The pattern repeated. Each time they came, the sky grew darker than it should have been. Clouds moved in with unnatural speed. The waves took on a strange rhythm, as if the sea were holding its breath. And always they pointed, sometimes from the beach, sometimes from the rocks below, once even from the stairs just outside the tower door. I never heard them climb, I never saw them move. But they were there, hand raised, eyes locked on some unseen point beyond the surf. It began to dawn on me that they weren't simply haunting this place. They were warning me, not with fear or menace, but with urgency. They were desperate for me to understand something coming from the sea. I started marking their appearances in my logbook. Times, weather, moon phases, even wind direction. And that's when I saw it. Every night they appeared. The barometric pressure would drop without warning. The waves would rise slightly, even on calm nights. Instruments in the tower would glitch, compasses spinning, the radio crackling with bursts of static and nonsense. One night I saw a child among them, a girl in a tattered dress, holding a stuffed rabbit so waterlogged it clung to her side like seaweed. Her mouth opened as if she were trying to scream, but no sound came. She looked right at me, her free hand trembling as it pointed toward the sea. Behind her, a man with half his face missing raised his arm to do the same. Then another, and another. That night, the clouds gathered so quickly they swallowed the moon. The wind howled in strange directions, circling the tower like an animal scenting blood. I could feel something building out there, some monstrous pressure pressing in on the world. The ghosts were no longer simply haunting, they were pleading. And I realized this wasn't about them. It wasn't even about the storm. It was about what the storm was bringing with it, something hidden beneath the waves, waiting for the veil between the worlds to thin just enough. They keep pointing. Every night. With more of them now. Faces I know, faces I don't. All of them drenched in seawater and silence. All of them fixated on that same distant point in the blackness, beyond where any light can reach. It was the fourth night of constant appearances. The ghosts had come like clockwork, hovering in the mist outside the lighthouse just after midnight. I had begun to expect them, even dread them, but nothing prepared me for the moment one of them finally spoke. Until then they had been nothing but silent warnings, mute figures in the fog, pointing toward the horizon as though urging me to see something I couldn't. Their presence was haunting, yes, but also oddly ritualistic, like they were repeating a task given to them by something older than death. That night the wind had died completely. The sea was unnaturally still, flat as black glass, not a single wave breaking against the rocks. I stood at the top of the tower, staring out across the water, when I saw her again, the woman in the long white dress. She'd appeared before, always further away than the others, her form more translucent, more difficult to focus on. But this time she was standing just outside the lantern room, inches from the glass, her face fully visible for the first time. Her eyes were sunken, and her hair clung to her face in wet strands, but it was her expression that stopped me. Calm, almost tender, like someone about to deliver a painful truth. I didn't dare move. The air was heavy, the kind that presses into your lungs and makes every breath feel borrowed. And then her lips parted. "It's coming," she said, her voice soft, almost lost in the silence. It was not a whisper of fear or panic. It was a fact, certain, final. I stood frozen, unable to respond. She didn't seem to see me so much as see through me, as though her words were meant for anyone who happened to be standing in this place at this time. A warning delivered over and over until someone finally listened. Then she spoke again. "And it won't just drown the shore," she said. "It will take what you love most." That second sentence wasn't cold or detached like the first. There was sorrow in it, grief, as if she had once loved something too and had already lost it. The words hung in the air like salt, like smoke. I wanted to ask her what she meant. Was it the storm? Was it something inside the storm? Who was coming? What was coming? But my mouth wouldn't work. My thoughts tangled into silence. She began to fade, the way fog dissipates just before dawn. Slowly, without sound, without ceremony. Her image shimmered once in the glow of the rotating beacon, and then she was gone. But the silence didn't return to normal. It was louder somehow, full of unseen things moving just out of reach. I could feel them, like pressure under my skin. Others didn't appear that night. Only her. As though the message had changed or perhaps escalated. I started to notice more subtle things in the days that followed. The waves were rising even when the wind stayed calm. The radio picked up strange bursts, unfamiliar languages, distorted cries, a rhythm like breathing. I saw a ship pass the edge of the fog bank 2 mornings later and vanish with no trace, no signal, nothing on radar. I reported it, but no one responded. I knew then that this wasn't a warning about weather. It was deeper, older. Something terrible was approaching, something that required the dead to deliver the message themselves, and their message had changed from caution to despair. Something was coming to take not just land or life, but memory, love, the very things we cling to when the dark rises. It began with the birds. They left. No warning, no gradual disappearance. One morning they simply weren't there. Gulls, terns, even the little black cormorants that used to perch on the rocks outside the lighthouse, they vanished. I didn't think much of it at first. Birds are fickle. Maybe something in their instincts told them to move on. But the silence they left behind was immediate and unnatural. The sea without birds feels wrong, like a painting with the color drained out of it. Then came the wind. Not stronger, just different. It blew in strange directions, swirling around, the tower in a pattern I couldn't trace. Sometimes it would stop completely, mid-gust, as if something had clamped its hand around the sky. I would stand outside the door and feel the shift in my bones, the way animals do before an earthquake. The instruments in the lighthouse began to misbehave soon after. The barometer dropped so fast it cracked. The compass spun slowly in circles no matter where I stood. And the tide chart, well, the tide didn't match it anymore. The sea rose higher on calm days, lower when it should have surged. It felt like the ocean was rewriting its own rules. The clouds didn't roll in. They formed above me, dense and low, as though they had been waiting just behind the veil. I began to see shapes in them, not animals or faces like the kind children. Imagine but outlines that didn't make sense. Towers, arcs, impossible angles, things that shifted the longer I stared. And they didn't move like clouds should. They hovered, motionless, even as the wind thrashed below. At night they would glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. It was never bright enough to see by, but always enough to feel watched. Even the seafoam changed. It started appearing darker, tinged with greenish-black streaks that looked almost oily but thicker, and it clung to the rocks longer than it should. I reached down to touch it once and felt my fingers go numb. Not from cold, but from something I couldn't name, something that didn't feel like water at all. I scrubbed the smell off my skin for hours, but it stayed in my nostrils, bitter and metallic, like old blood or rusted chains. At night, the lighthouse creaked in ways I'd never heard. Long, groaning sounds from the base of the tower, as if something enormous was shifting below the rock. The waves, too, had started to change. They didn't roll or crash the way they used to. Now they slapped the shore in uneven rhythms, like footsteps, like something pacing just beneath the surface. More than once I thought I saw something moving beneath them, dark shapes that didn't belong to any creature I knew. The air itself felt charged, electric and heavy, like the space between lightning and thunder. I began waking with my skin, damp and my ears ringing, as if I'd been submerged in water. And always the sense that something was approaching grew stronger, not with noise or chaos, but with stillness, an unnatural calm that pressed down on everything like a lid. I tried to send word inland, messages on the old radio, notes left in the signal logs. No response. Just static or strange echoes of my own voice played back to me seconds after I spoke. It was as though the distance between here and the rest of the world had stretched, or been erased entirely. I walked down to the shoreline once to look at the horizon. It used to be blue, endless. but now it looked like glass, unmoving, reflective, almost too perfect. And above it, something hung in the sky. Not a cloud, not a star, a shape, watching, waiting. The lighthouse wasn't just a beacon for ships. It had been built with more purpose than just to guide mariners through stormy nights or fog-covered waters. It was designed to watch, to protect, to keep something hidden beneath the waves at bay. I never fully understood that, not until now. In all the years I've stood at its top, spinning the great light across the sea, I had no real knowledge of the true nature of this place. All I knew was that it had been here longer than I had, and it would remain long after I'm gone. But recently, I've begun to wonder if it's meant to remain or if it's simply waiting for the right moment to crumble. There's something about the way the stone beneath my feet feels when I stand inside it now. Cold, yes, but not like the usual chill of stone against skin. It's as if it knows something, like it's conscious, like it's holding its breath, waiting. I used to think the structure was just a machine, a simple thing of mortar and brick, that had weathered storms and waves for decades. But now the weight of it seems different. When I walk through the halls, I hear sounds, soft and muffled, as if something beneath the floorboards is shifting. Sometimes the walls hum at a frequency I can't quite understand, low like a distant growl, but deep enough to make my teeth ache. When the ghosts first appeared, I thought they were just that, spirits, wandering figures that had no connection to this place, that simply wandered the earth without purpose. But the more they came, the more I saw the connection. They weren't just lost souls, trying to find peace or redemption. They were here for a reason. And that reason had something to do with this lighthouse. Every night, the same eerie procession would occur. They'd stand outside in the fog, their faces cast in shadow, pointing toward the horizon, toward the place I could never see, but knew was there. I never saw the storm. I only saw the way the air around me thickened, felt the way the water churned beneath the surface, as if something was stirring deep within the ocean. But they weren't just warning of a storm, they were warning of something darker, something hidden. I began to suspect that the lighthouse wasn't merely a guidepost. It was a shield, a barrier. And what it was holding back was something far worse than a passing squall. I'd heard stories when I was younger, stories of sailors who disappeared near this shore, stories of ships that left no trace, just scattered debris found days later, washed up on the rocks. But those were always just legends, weren't they? Myths to keep the superstitious away. But now the reality of it was sinking in, and I could feel it deep in my bones. Whatever was being kept out was close. And it wasn't just the sea it threatened. The lighthouse's beam had always been constant, always sweeping across the water, never wavering. But now, as the ghosts appeared more frequently, the beam started to flicker. Not like a malfunction. No, this was something else. It wasn't just the light, it was everything. The way the air felt in the tower, the way the ground seemed to tremble. I began to wonder if the tower was starting to fail, if the very thing that had been built to protect us was starting to falter, to weaken under pressure. I've always taken my duties seriously. I've kept the light shining, day after day, night after night. But now every time I walk past the controls, I feel a strange reluctance to turn them on. I wonder if it's already too late, if the light isn't enough to keep back whatever's coming. The ghosts, once so distant, are now close enough to touch, their eyes full of urgency, their hands trembling as they point, always pointing toward the sea. I've thought about abandoning the tower, of leaving this place behind, running inland, away from whatever has stirred beneath the waves, but every time I try I find myself pulled back. It's as though the lighthouse itself refuses to let me leave. It knows something I don't. And now I understand. It's not just the sea that needs protection. There's something deeper in these waters, something ancient and hungry. The lighthouse was built to hold it at bay. And now, as the storms rise, as the ghosts gather at its base, I can feel that the barrier is weakening. And with it, the world outside is starting to slip. The days have grown longer, stretched thin like the fog that never seems to leave. The lighthouse stands as a lone sentinel in a world that feels increasingly alien. Every night, I keep the light burning, though it feels more like a gesture of defiance than of protection. I've been doing this for so long, so many nights in the cold, alone with the sea, the wind, and the shadows that cling to the walls, that I've lost track of time. But lately I feel like I'm no longer standing. God, I feel like I'm waiting for something I can't quite name, but I know it's coming. I know because the dead have told me so. The ghosts, they aren't just a warning anymore. They've become something else, something more urgent, more desperate. They aren't merely spirits seeking release. They are harbingers. Their warnings have become clearer. They are no longer just pointing, silent in their grief. Now they speak to me in fragments, in half-breathed words that hang in the air like smoke. Sometimes I catch them in the corner of my eye, standing just beyond the tower, near the base of the cliffs. Other times they stand at the threshold of the door, their eyes wide, mouths open in a perpetual silent scream, like they are begging me to understand something they cannot say. I've heard them more clearly now. Their voices are like whispers, in the wind, faint at first, but unmistakable once they've crossed the distance. Don't let the light go out. Those are the words that haunt me the most. Don't let the light go out. Over and over, as if they know, as if they understand what I haven't yet fully grasped. There is something out there beyond the horizon that is waiting. Something that feeds on the darkness, that grows stronger when the light fades. It's not just a storm, it's not just the weather. I can feel it in my bones, in the very air around me. The storm will come, yes, but it's not the wind or the rain that worries me. It's what follows. The very ocean itself seems to pull at the edges of the world, pulling the tide further and further back like the calm before a greater wave, one that threatens to tear everything apart. And I know that when that wave comes, it will take more than just the land or the ships that sail near the shore. It will take everything. The lighthouse is the only thing that stands between us and whatever waits beneath the waves. It's not just a tower, it's a barrier. It holds back something far darker, something that has been trapped beneath the surface of the water for longer than anyone remembers. The ghosts, those who've drowned, those who've disappeared, are not merely the remnants of the lost. They are the witnesses, the ones who saw it coming before it rose from the depths. They know what's out there and they know what it wants. I've tried to leave. There have been times when the fog was thick enough to suffocate, when the silence stretched on for hours, that I've packed my things ready to abandon the lighthouse. But every time something pulls me back. The doors won't open. The light refuses to go out. It's as if the tower itself is unwilling to let me leave, unwilling to let the light fade. It's as though it knows that once the light is extinguished, there will be nothing left to stop what is coming. The sea now more than ever feels like it's alive. It's as if it's calling to something beneath it, something that doesn't belong to the world of the living. I hear the whispers in the crashing of the waves. I see the shadows in the curling mist. The ghosts, once mere echoes, now seem more real, more present, like they're trying to tell me something, to show me something before it's too late. But I don't know what to do with their warnings. I don't know how to stop what is coming. I've never felt so helpless, so small, in the face of something so much bigger than me. But I know one thing. I can't let the light go out. The ghosts know it. The tower knows it. And now so do I. As long as the light burns, there's hope, however small. But once it dies, the darkness will pour in, and whatever waits beneath the sea will rise. And when it does, nothing will stop it.